What's up, guys? Got some low effort content for you today. I've been seeing these World of Warcraft tier list videos flying around, and I figured I'd give my take on it. So let's get started with the worst WoW expansion, and that is an easy one. The king of dog shit. That is Warlords of Draenor. Oh my god, this expansion was terrible. Almost all of the tier list videos have this as the worst. It's the undisputed king. I mean, I don't think anybody doesn't think this one is the worst. Almost everything about it was forgettable. The only real redeeming quality I saw to it was the story. This was like the start of them making some of the leveling up quests more cinematic. And I thought that was okay, but it wasn't the greatest. It was very forgettable. The story, I don't remember anything about the WoD story other than like you get to see fucking Green Warlock Man Gul'dan do stuff and like choke off. I don't know, the warlords, the actual warlords of the Draenor, like the fucking orcs you're supposed to give a shit about, you don't at all. They're like irrelevant, it seems like. I don't know. Yeah, terrible expansion. The PvP was pretty forgettable. The rating was really forgettable. The environments also pretty forgivable, lackluster, not much content. Garrisons were terrible. Everything about it was just pretty bad, and that's really the only expansion I can say where like everything about it was, ooh, man, pretty rough. So yeah, Warlords of Draenor, not good. Next, going into the C tier, this is where I'm probably gonna catch some flack because there's a lot of people who love this fucking expansion. I don't know why, but let's just bite the bullet here. Mop is C tier. I don't know. I was not a fan of this expansion at all. Now, this is how I'm rating the games. I'm rating the games from all aspects. I'm rating the expansions from all aspects of the game: PvP, PvE, story, environments, theme, all of that. So a lot of people look at Mop and go, "Oh my God, there was XYZ raid was really really fun," or that one PvP season where it was really well balanced. I can't think of the name of it because I wasn't really actively playing it a ton. But you got to understand that everything is factored in: the story, the theme, PvP. I mean, I remember Mop at the start. The balance was horrendous. The Arms Warriors and Mop were just stupidly strong at the start, like literally one-shotting people. Go on YouTube, type in Wreckful Heroic Strike one-shot. I mean, actually Vive has the best one. If you type in Vive Heroic Strike, like he's got this amazing 2v3 that is just absurd with like Vanguards, I think. It's one of my favorite WoW clips of all time. But it just shows you the absurdity of the class balance, and it was egregiously bad. And at this point, WoW had been out for what, like 10 years? Like, come on, dude. The class balance for PvP should not have been that bad for how long the game's been out. The theme of the game, horrible. Did a lot of damage to the brand. The panda shit was straight up fucking retarded. Now, I wouldn't have minded the panda race being added in, I don't know, let's say the pandas were coming in with BFA. Let's say the panda race and the whole expansion being themed around pandas and leveling up, doing kung fu panda shit, helping big fat panda guy set up a banquet for his friends. Like, what fucking game are we playing right now? It was terrible. The whole thing. I know the environments were done well, but it just did not. It's not Warcraft. Come on, dude. It was the panda race was a literal April Fool's joke. Like, it's an Easter egg. Like, come on, man. And people don't believe this. For April Fools on the WoW Armory, they made everybody a fucking Pandaren back in Wrath. Like, that. Come on, dude. The people that defend this by saying, it was in Warcraft 3. No, dude. No. It was a blatant attempt to try and get the Asian market. Failed horribly. It failed really, really badly. And the one thing that's propping up Mop and the end of Cataclysm was they basically gave away Diablo 3 to anybody that subscribed for a year, and that was during the Cataclysm Mop period where the game took a shit. But the subs were artificially inflated by this Diablo 3 promotional thing where people were just like, I'm gonna buy Diablo 3 I might as well get this. So Mop, bad. The leveling, I didn't like it. Monks, I like new classes, but monks compared to demon hunters or death knights are not cool. It's a really uncool class, to be honest. and the balance at the start was bad, really bad. So Mop is on the shit list. All right, another still in the C tier, Cataclysm. Cataclysm is the most tragic of all of the expansions because it could have been the best. It could have been at S, but just flawed execution. Why could it have been the best, dude? So there were so many badass things happening this expansion. They redid the entire old world with tons of Easter eggs. Now, anybody that played in vanilla that went back and redid the Cataclysm quests, the redone stuff, like, for example, my character, I have the old school lore master title. Like, I did all of the quests in the game in vanilla when it was still like vanilla content before they redid it. So when I went back and redid some of them with the new Cataclysm content, it was very cool to see the Easter eggs and how the zones evolved. For example, Thousand Needles. Thousand Needles in vanilla was not a big fucking lake. So to see the Thousand Needles desert zone become a lake and to swim underwater and see the dead crabs and see the old Thousand Needles underwater was super cool. To see these quest lines changed and expanded on and remixed, and I don't know, that seeing that the world evolve like that was really cool, but it was an almost useless feature. No one actually utilized it, and no one still is utilizing it. All of that content they did, all of that revamping the entire Eastern Kingdoms in Kalimdor was a fucking basically a waste of time, because this was also when they implemented, I believe, well, I can't remember if it was Wrath or Cataclysm, but Cataclysm was really when the recruit a friend, leveling through dungeons, all that stuff really took off. So no one had any reason to go back and do that old world content. It was pointless, and this was before they did the thing where all the zones level down to you. There wasn't any normalization there. I think they added that in BFA, if I remember right. So leveling in the actual zones was really inefficient and really annoying, because you'd get like halfway through a zone and be vastly out leveled, right? So Cataclysm, tons of potential. Rated Battlegrounds. This was something that so many people in the PvP community were hyped about, including me. Rated Battlegrounds were a fucking flop, dude. The exploits were ridiculous. Blizzard never fixed the shit. The community around Rated Battlegrounds is terrible, and it hasn't gotten any better. Like, unless it's gotten better since I stopped playing BFA, it may be worse. Rated Battlegrounds may be worse than what they started off in Cataclysm, which was also terrible. But in the start of Cataclysm, it was just like literal exploits of people flying under the map and fucking hacking, and the DDoSing thing was still a thing. Not as crazy back then, just because it wasn't as popular. But man, Rated Battlegrounds were something that people were so pumped for, and they just didn't fucking matter. And progressively throughout the years, just no one gives a fuck about RBGs, and it could have been one of the coolest fucking things. It was sad, honestly. Now, there was some good things about Cataclysm. I liked the launch. I liked the dungeons being hard at the start. That was cool. It made the game social, because when I found a good tank, I wanted to add them to my friends list. When I found good players, I added them to my friends list, and we socialized and did these dungeons, and it was fun. The only better dungeon experience I've ever had was Wildstar, which also had hard dungeons that encouraged people to socialize and make friends and be a part of a fucking, you had to rely on people. So I did like that about Cataclysm. I liked the zones, the underwater shit. Honestly, I thought they did that pretty well. I know it's not like a fan favorite zone, but I thought it was a cool little remix, something new, first time we'd ever seen. I know they're never going to do it again, but I thought it was neat that they took that risk with Vashj'ir. The leveling, it is a little forgettable, but I liked the zones. I liked the desert zone. I liked, I don't know, I thought it was okay in that department. The PvP was meh. I don't remember anything super egregious, but meh. And the last really bad thing I remember about Cataclysm was this is when they started normalizing everybody. They started taking away personal player prestige, which is something that's so important to MMOs. An example of personal player prestige, vanilla had the best of it, where you would see a guy in full, like, there has to be a hierarchy where in vanilla, this was my favorite example, was I was a fucking retard in vanilla. I was terrible at the game. I didn't know what the fuck I was doing. But I thought it was cool that there was a warrior in full dreadnought, epic mount, like the top 1%. It's got to exist because it makes the game feel epic when you have these heroic characters that are actually players. And Cataclysm is when they really started to do away with that. They put in transmog, which essentially makes everybody look very similar. It makes the elite armor sets not that great. From a prestige perspective, they started doing, I think this is when they really started doing recolors and heroic modes. LFR is a big one. They just really started taking away the cool things that the top players were doing that made them cool and epic and made the world feel epic, and just dumbing them down, making them just not as cool or prestigious anymore. And then you had them just actively shitting on people with, for example, I'm an old school Winter Spring Frost Saber. I did that shit back when the grind was hard. And then they just go and fucking make it like a 30-day thing where you do one quest a day for 30 days and get it. Like, that's fucking bullshit. And they did that with a ton of things in the game. Like, a ton of really prestigious things got completely trivialized by Cataclysm. And they did it on purpose. Like, the Winter Spring Frost Saber thing, like, they did that shit on purpose. They intentionally just made that shit fucking easy as a middle finger to anybody that grinded it out legit. Like, come on, that's bullshit. So, I don't know what the fucking deal is with that, but them, terrible. So, and the last one on the C tier is Battle for Azeroth. I don't hate this fucking expansion. I mean, I'm not currently playing right now, but the reason I'm not playing WoW is I'm just doing other things, and it's meh. Like, I don't get the hate for this. I know this is at the bottom of a lot of people's tier list. I didn't think it was that bad. I mean, the start, I thought the questing was cool. I liked the zone stories. I think it's cool that Alliance and Horde have different stories. The zones look good. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that's right about this. I play a Feral Druid. Feral Druid DPS was fucking horrendously bad, like literally worse than the tanks. So there was some balance issues at the start. It did get fixed. It took them a little too goddamn long. But there were some egregious things that really shouldn't exist for a game that was 13, 14 years old at this point. But ultimately, I thought it was pretty good. Like the dungeons. Like the raids, PvP I thought was alright. I mean, maybe this is personal bias because I was having fun playing like Guardian Druid and doing something that really no one else was doing. Wasn't great. Nothing was really amazing. I didn't love the fucking raids to death. I didn't love the dungeons to death. I didn't love the PvP to death. But it was okay. I don't think it's as horrible as people are making it out to be. So, B. This is a questionable B, maybe C, and that is Legion. I thought they turned it around, man. Coming from BFA or coming from Warlords of Draenor, dude, I can't even remember the name Warlords of Draenor. That's how freaking forgettable this expansion is. Coming from Warlords of Draenor into Legion, yeah, good. They really fucking corrected the ship. And I thought it was a solid expansion. I liked the questing. I liked the artifact shit. I thought was pretty neat. Having individual, unique stories for each spec. That's pretty wild, man. The class halls I thought were really cool. And might be biased, but like me being in the Druid class hall with a ton of other Druids, since I was a Feral Druid YouTuber for so long, people recognized me. And it was kind of cool that, there's like all these people that can potentially recognize me because they all play the same class. And I don't know, I thought that was pretty neat. I thought Legion had a lot of content, like a fucking shitload of unique quests, zones, art, story. I mean, there was a lot to do in this expansion. PvP was pretty good. The rating I thought was pretty good. Mythic Plus I thought was a fucking solid addition to the game. Honestly, pretty damn good. I didn't play it all the way through, but I definitely thought it was a solid expansion. One of the better ones, I'd say. And I've always said that I wondered what World of Warcraft would be if we went from Classic, BC, Wrath of the Lich King, Legion, and we just fucking skipped Cataclysm and Mop and Warlords. If we skipped those three, like the Dark Ages of WoW, I think the game would be in a much healthier state because, oh man, Legion is where they corrected the ship, I think, and really made it a little bit better. Unfortunately, they're sort of trapped by a lot of their legacy decisions, like LFR. They can't just fucking rip that out. Oh, I wish they would. Maybe they can't. I don't know. But I'll give it to them with Legion. All right, let's get on to A tier. All right, let's fucking do it. I don't know which one to put first here. This is a real close A tier. So let's do classic. So A tier, classic. All of the reasons why it's on A tier. The game was brand new, innovative, whatever. Magical. The game was just fucking magic. As dog shit as a lot of the mechanics were, class balance was horrendously bad. The game was epic. Personal player prestige was at an all-time high. The top 1% and the bottom 99%, the discrepancy was never bigger. To the point to where, maybe a few thousand people killed KT. Maybe like 1,000 people in the world killed that shit. It was very little. Very little people actually did all the content in the game. It was great. I really enjoyed it. And as somebody that played vanilla when I was 12 years old, the magic was just amplified tenfold. This wasn't my first WoW Classic. Wasn't my first MMO. I played RuneScape and a few other things before that. But dude, unrivaled to the point to where it's like a meme for me to say, like, no woman can compete with World of Warcraft Classic through the eyes of a 12-year-old. It's unreal. So I really enjoyed Classic. I played a Feral Druid. I played a Feral Druid throughout the entirety of WoW. They were terrible, fucking horrible, but it was still fun because no one knew what they were doing. The internet hadn't reached the point to where there were YouTube videos or YouTube. What, did YouTube even exist? If it did, it was a shell of what it was. It wasn't very popular at all back then. There weren't guides for everything. It was a magical time, and I really am sad for anybody that didn't get to experience it legitimately. Now, I don't want to go down a classic shitting on the WoW Classic release rabbit hole, but it's not going to be the same at all. A lot of the things that made Classic awesome will not exist in the re-release coming up. For obvious reasons, it's a solved game. But I really am sad for anybody that didn't get to experience it because it really was something cool. And yeah. And I don't think that's specifically because I was 12 years old at the time. I think it really was. I think it was a combination of the fact that the game was awesome for the time period and I was 12. It just fucking blew it out of the water. So, let's get on to the next A tier, the Burning Crusade. So, it was vanilla, a little bit less magical, still had player prestige, and the mechanics were better. So, TBC had mechanically much better raids, much better PvP, but not quite as magical, not quite as much, oh my god, this guy has an epic mount and full dreadnought. It wasn't quite as crazy, but it was still there. You still had warglaives. You still had epic flying. Wasn't quite as prestigious as an epic mount, epic ground mount in vanilla, but still really solid. It hangs with vanilla because mechanically the game was better. The class balance, while it was still bad compared to later expansions, was way better than vanilla. PvP was way better. You had arenas come out, which I'm a big arena nut, so I really like that. I don't know. It was just vanilla, but a little bit better mechanically, gameplay-wise. So, and one big thing about that I really like about vanilla, well, this was in Classic too, was the you progressed from raid to raid to raid to raid in vanilla, and you had a tier of raids. Almost a tier list of raids, and I don't know how to word it, but basically, your guild, your starter guild would start off in Karazhan, then move to SSC, then move to I forget where you move to next, but you move through the raids to Black Temple, then to Sunwell. It wasn't the old content wasn't invalidated by the new patch. I think BC did that very, very well. You had casual raiding, with Karazhan, and you had the hardcore rating with Sunwell, and everybody could get in on the action with a fairly easily. You could experience rating in Karazhan and not be too hardcore, whereas in vanilla it wasn't quite as accessible. So I don't know. I liked the BC rating progression system with. I don't know. I thought it was okay. All right, now let's get into the number one, fucking the king, Wrath of the Lich King. So I don't know why I have this as S, because I can remember so much. Wow, that guy would start his fucking car. Jesus, listen to that fucking thing. Holy fuck, that guy needs to change his oil. I don't know if the video will pick that shit up. That was, Jesus. So, Wrath of the Lich King. I don't know why I have this S tier, because this was when I was playing the game the most. It's when I cared the most. It's when, I don't know, it just mattered a lot to me. But I can remember so much shit that was fucking terrible about this expansion. Well, not fucking terrible, but bad. But the peak World of Warcraft, the best time to ever play the game was in Wrath, and I think not too many people can argue with that. So let's start at the beginning of Wrath, which was when it was kind of bad. So they re-released Naxxramas at the start of Wrath. That was kind of lame in my opinion. I mean, I know a lot of people didn't do Nax, but really, are you gonna re-release the same goddamn raid? And it was bad. It was fucking piss easy, to the point to where, who's the guild? Oh fuck, Paragon maybe? They didn't even get to max level to kill the goddamn bosses in Naxxramas. They didn't even bother to get to max level to clear the content in Nax, the re-release. That's how fucking terrible and easy this shit was. You had some cool achievements. Wrath was when they really started to flesh out the achievement system. I like the achievement system. I mean, I know it fucks with some things in a bad way, but I thought it was kind of a neat addition to the game. Something fun to do when you're not raiding or doing PvP or whatever. So I liked that. And that was back when it was fresh and awesome and just came out. It's kind of a fun little new activity to do. Death Knights, badass. Death Knights were a badass fucking class. Thematically, abilities were dope, dude. What a fucking cool class. However, oh my god, were they fucking OP. Like, so there has been... Okay, so maybe Mop Warriors at the start and Death Knights. And Death Knights definitely have Mop Warriors beat. But oh my god, Death Knights? Anybody didn't play back then? Death Knights were the best ranged class in the game in Wrath of the Lich King. Yes, the best ranged class. They had this spec where you just spammed fucking Chains of Ice and Death Coil from fucking 30 yards. It was the dumbest shit. But at least it was a cool class. It wasn't fucking monks. Monks are lame as shit. And they eventually fixed the class balance. So the first season of Wrath PvP was pretty bad. Death Knights were just destroying everybody. But, I'm biased because Wrath of the Lich King was the first time a lot of these subpar dog shit specs became good. The very start of Wrath was when Feral Druids were like, we're not like a bullshit class anymore. The same thing with like Enhancement Shamans and Elemental Shamans and all these specs that were just sub-tier terrible. Wrath of the Lich King was the first time they actually cared about it, it seemed like. So that was a magical time, especially for PvP. Because you had all these veterans that were coming out on Moonkins and Feral Druids and Enhancement Shamans and Ret Paladins and these specs that were just, God, really? We got a fucking Ret Paladin in the raid? Come on. And now they're good. And now you have these veteran players that are finally, coming to the forefront. And again, this is my bias because I was a Feral Druid, and Feral Druids throughout Classic and BC were, not your favorite to have in the fucking group or on your arena team or whatever. And now we were. Now it was like, whoa, this is awesome. Now I'm finally fucking owning. So that was cool. That was really cool to freshen up the PvP. And you went from BC where it was one viable spec per class was basically how it worked. If you were lucky if that wasn't the case. Druids, Resto, Arms, Warriors. That's kind of the way it went. So that was cool. The rating was pretty good. And this goes back to my peak argument. Peak World of Warcraft was Season 6, Season 7. The Ulduar, that Ulduar phase, I believe, was Season 6, start of Season 7, maybe? What a good time to... Yeah, Season 6, I think. That was probably the best time for the game in general. Ulduar was one of the probably the best raid ever made. They introduced hard modes, which in a good way, like hitting the big red button, like that was fucking cool. I like that. I like that kind of hard mode. Not a let's leave the instance and set the thing to hard. It's no, let's not use let's not use the tower. I can't remember the mechanics, but like let's do the fight differently, and that makes it harder. That was cool. PvP balance was fantastic. Season 6 and Season 7, every spec was viable, I think. Maybe without, like, for exception, maybe like Holy Priest and like some weird, every play style was viable, I guess. Enhancement was good, Elemental was good, Feral was good, Ret was good, whatever. The Prot specs, even the Prot specs were good. Prot Paladins could heal as a fucking thing. Like, the healing spec was Prot, and they would throw fucking shields as healing Paladin. It was wild. But it was pretty damn balanced. And it was just a good time to play the game. The theme of the game was awesome. The leveling was fun. The zones were cool. Arthas, fucking... Dude, come on. Awesome. ICC was a fucking great raid. It was before... So the game was accessible, but wasn't trivial. And I think that was... It had the perfect balance of accessibility, not being trivial. I would have liked to see the rating be more like TBC Classic kind of tier list, because some of the things were invalidated with patches. Like Nax, really no one did Nax after a little bit, whereas people were doing Karazhan all throughout TBC. But great fucking time to play the game. It did sort of get stale towards the end. God, there was a content drought. ICC lasted forever, but it was a fun raid. And, the community sort of liked it because you could do GDKP runs. And, but it was still, hard enough to where it was cool when somebody got the world first on it. So, yeah, that's my tier list. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I'm curious to know what you guys think. I think some people might take issue with Wrath being my top, considering it had a lot of issues, but it was peak WoW, dude. Peak World of Warcraft was fucking that Ulduar period. That period of the game was, I think, the best it's ever been. What a good time to play the game. So, anyway, let me know what you guys think. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you next time. Have a good one.